Hi and welcome to this week where we will continue our medical theme. We are looking at the Nobel Prize in Medicine, which this year went to two researchers, Katalin Karikó and Drew Weissman, for their work on mRNA-vaccines. I am joined again by my colleague Michael Jewett, BioStocks biomedical expert. Welcome.
It's good to be here again.
So I'm going to ask you, what is it about Karikó and Weissman's work that was worthy of a Nobel Prize? What was game-changing?
Well, they've been looking at mRNA as a potential therapeutic for a very long time, decades. But what they were able to discover was a way to modify it so that it wouldn't be toxic if injected in human beings. mRNA in its natural form, it causes an immune reaction, a very strong immune reaction. And with that modification, it became safe.
And this might be a bit of a silly question then, but we already have vaccines, what is now called traditional vaccines. Mm-hmm. So why was there a need? Why did they decide to put all the work into creating a new form of vaccine when we have vaccines that have basically eradicated diseases like measles and TB?
Mm-hmm. Well, a big factor is speed. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we needed something to be developed really quickly. And with mRNA, you have that benefit over traditional vaccines. With traditional vaccines, you need to grow virus particles or whatever the pathogen is, and that takes a long time. mRNA actually in the long run is also cheaper to develop, and it's a lot more flexible compared to traditional vaccines. Once you have the technology in place, you can develop any antigen and therefore any vaccine basically with mRNA.
So you get speed, flexibility, and a cheaper price.
Yeah.
But how does it actually work?
Yeah, well, mRNA is basically the genetic code that gives cells the instructions for producing a specific protein. So in the case of COVID, for example, you develop an mRNA molecule that has the code for producing the spike protein, which is found on the outside of the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV-2. So once you inject that mRNA code into the cells will produce the spike protein, and it will cause the immune system to develop antibodies against that. So if you are infected with COVID, then the immune system is ready for that, and you won't have such a severe reaction to it.
So could you say that we become our own vaccine factory?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people, the pandemic was the first time that they heard about mRNA vaccines. But like you mentioned, the story of their development is much longer than that, and it's not been a completely smooth journey. There was some skepticism, both from academia and from pharma. Mm-hmm. Why was this?
Yeah, well, that's because of what I said at the beginning. mRNA in its natural form, if injected in the body, was just toxic. And so funders said, why should I put my money in this? It's not going to do any good. But researchers like Karikó and Weissman, they persisted. They kept on working on it. They saw its potential. And finally, here we are today, with mRNA being used in vaccines. This was one of the big criticisms with the mRNA vaccines, that mRNA, we don't know anything about mRNA, but as I said, we've been working with mRNA for several decades now. So,
but you could also say that it really showcases the importance of funding basic research, because especially Karikó, she struggled to get funding while she was at a university.
Yeah, absolutely. If you keep working with something and it just doesn't work, then funders are just going to be skeptical about it and they won't put their money in it. But that's why it's so important, if you really believe in something, to just keep working on it, and eventually you'll come through.
So you have the importance of the basic research that was done at the university, but then in the next step you have the importance of smaller biotech companies, in this case primarily BioNTech, that Karikó worked for after she left the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, going commercial, that definitely helps with the funding, for example. And BioNTech, you know, they were founded in 2008 with the idea of developing mRNA vaccines against cancer. So they did a lot of work with that. They also got involved with developing mRNA vaccines against infectious diseases like rabies or influenza, which they're still working on to this day. So they had the infrastructure in place to then be able to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. What the thing they did that helped them, you know, with the clinical trials was this collaboration with Pfizer, and that's where collaborating with a big pharma company really has its place. You know, they had to recruit more than 40,000 people for the clinical trials, and a small biotech just isn't able to do that on its own.
So we have all links in the chain in some way in these two Nobel laureates. We have the basic research, the small biotech, and then collaboration with big pharma.
Exactly, it's a good example of that.
And for big pharma and also for BioNTech, it's led to huge sales, of course. If we look at Pfizer, then in 2021, they had a total revenue of about $80 billion US. That was largely driven by the COVID vaccine. But as COVID is becoming more contained, we're seeing fewer vaccinations, and of course the sales are going down. You talked a little bit about using mRNA in other indications. What's the future like for mRNA vaccines?
Yeah, well, COVID is still with us, unfortunately, but as you said, it's on its way down, which is good. So booster shots for COVID, I think, are still going to be a thing, at least for some time. But then, like I said, we will have this technology implemented in vaccines for cancer, more as a therapeutic vaccine rather than necessarily a preventative vaccine. But this is something that a lot of pharma companies are working with. Pfizer, for example, BioNTech, Eli Lilly. So you have several companies that are trying to develop their own cancer vaccines with mRNA technology, and there's a lot of promise here. We'll see how it goes in the next few decades.
We're even seeing mRNA vaccine conferences these days.
That's right. Just this week we had the mRNA Cancer Vaccine Summit in Boston, where you had several big pharma companies, but also smaller biotechs participating, including the Danish biotech Evaxion Biotech. They have their own mRNA technology being implemented for developing cancer vaccines.
So as a final point then, is the future all mRNA vaccine, or is there a role for traditional vaccines to play still?
You know, as I said, mRNA has many benefits. So I think in the long run we will see that shift. But right now, as of today, traditional vaccines still have their place in the world, especially in the developing world. So don't count those out just yet.
Don't count us out either. We will be back next week as usual. Until then, don't forget to like the program and follow our channel.
Did you know that the sun always shines in Lund? At least we hope it will on October 25th, 26th, when it's time again for the BioStock Life Science Summit here at Medical Village. Join us then for a full 2-day in-person event where we'll have more than 40 companies presenting their business cases, as well as expert insights with big pharma representatives, VCs and investors talking about financing and deal making in the Nordic. Last year there was a waiting list, so don't forget to register today to secure your spot at this year's BioStock Life Science Summit.